Cash chasing week is upon us in NRL Supercoach, and I'm most likely going to be hitting the boost button this week, and most of you probably should as well. If you use the 0 or the 1 trade last week, then you're definitely triple trading this week and getting ahead of the game. We're chasing break evens, we're chasing cash gains, and there are a bunch in all of the positions that you should be looking at for sure. And in the hooking slot, myself, I've got Mamazelis and Sandon Smith. And if we did want any of the hookers, it would be moving Sandon Smith down to the half position, because both these guys are going to make cash. 302k for Mam, 237 for Sandon Smith, which is great. And they both have terrific break evens. In the hooking slot, we see Wade Egan pick up 110 last week, which was great. He will make some cash at 491. But Tom Starling at 342 is the guy on my lips this week. Not owned by a tremendous amount of people, will definitely go up well into this week and is someone on my buy list. Connor Watson is in there as well with 103 last week after the 55. He shouldn't score 2 tries every week, but we do expect him to be in that mid-60s on a regular basis. And it could be a matter of, do you go Starling and Watson, or is Watson a target for you in the second row forward this week under 600k, given a lot of the other guns in the second row forward position are in the sort of 680, 660 type of range there and can be hard to attain. But those two guys up top, Pete Mamazelis as well, if you don't own him at 302k, you could jump on that one. I personally would select Starling before I would get Pete if you didn't have either. More for the fact that Starling and the Raiders play some nicer opponents over the next month, whereas Pete and the South, they have a couple of tough ones, namely being this week against the Sharkies, where you wouldn't expect him to get a tremendous amount of those attacking stats. Guys like Corey Paix, I think at 232, you could easily hold. If you started with Riley Smith, could you chase the upside of some of these cash gainers ahead of him in price point? Potentially. He has only been making tackles, so I think with him, he'll definitely continue to get some decent minutes, but with 51 across the 2 weeks, he's not going to make that early cash. So there's guys ahead. Sandon Smith you can purchase as well as guys that will make some cash this week. If you have Harry Grant, you're holding steady, and you Reed Marnie with a nice bounce back 78, although how exciting is he going to be on a week-to-week basis? Could you downgrade him? Sure. Would you trade Max Plath? I don't think so. You're coming off a really good one in round 1. Not so good in round 2, but should continue to improve. Guys, if you're checking this out on YouTube, potentially, if you want to use the podcast as well, that's a good way to do it. Follow along, give a 5-star review. That would be so appreciated. And also hit the like and subscribe on YouTube as well. Thanks to you guys for being here in this one. So with our front row forward, Payne Haas is the guy that everyone's looking at this week, and for good reason, that's for sure. Toby Couchman next week, 65 is his average across the 2 and played big minutes in both. He's definitely the one to look at, but after this buy, and then it's going to be Tino Fa'asuamaleaui as well at 531k, just the 1 game so far with his 109. So if you're looking for a good scorer this week without him going up in price, then sweet, but there are other options that are actually going to move the needle this week. Payne Haas being one of them at 669, averaging 101 across the first 2 games, offloading at will, and is in a lot of teams now at 22.5%. So Payne Haas, I think, is a very, very important purchase this week. If you don't own Terrell May, you're silly. Right now, it's somehow Corey Horsburgh is owned more than Terrell. Mr. Terrell should be in your side. 100% there. Adam Fanua-Blake, you're holding steady with him. In terms of other potential buys in the front row forward position, it is just Haas. It is just Tino. I wouldn't climb into anyone else at this point. Even Emre Gula averaging 50. Next week, you could have a look, but I suggest probably not. Barnett, if you want to go him to Payne Haas, I understand that one. If you want to go him to Tino to free up a bit of cash for other moves, I think that is fine. Also, Hamish Stewart, 44 average across his 2 games. Wait till round 4 to make a decision on him. That is all for the front row forward slot. All right, personally, I have Hopgood, and a little bit worried about that one. Hubner, Geimer, both those guys, unfortunately, out for me this week. Hubner will make some cash in 3 weeks now that he's out for 2. So hold on to him, I think. Hopgood can make some moves with him. I'm potentially looking at Payne Haas coming in. If you want to go to want to go to Watson or Dylan Lucas, that's completely fine as well. Just be aware that with Hopgood's 100 break even, he could definitely hit that, but the Eels aren't playing very well at the moment, and definitely been frustrating watching him accumulate very, very limited points just because of how poor this team is, and there's only so much defense he can do, and we want him to be taking a little bit of attack as well, which just isn't coming right now. So Corey Osborne, make sure he's in your side, either in front row forward or second row. Olakau'atu picked up a 44, and I think he'll bounce back for sure and play and sort of hit 60 plus, but now that he's got the 44 in that rolling average, he's not going to have the tremendous cash gain. So I think there's other guys you can target this week. Teague Wilton there had a solid one of 77. You've got Isaiah on the other hand with a 41. Those two guys, I think you could easily hold. He shouldn't play that bad again, and should be a really, really good base stack game for him against the Storm, and he should have to step up in that one. Hopefully he was just a bit ill last week and was avoiding contact. That's for sure with him. But Satili Tupanua stands out this week as a pretty interesting buy with the 67 average across the two, and he should have the left edge position for a month now. At 425k, really, really solid pick. If you want someone in that price point for your second row, I think he's a really solid one. If you have the injury to Hosking and you want to go to Satili, I think it's fine. There are other potential good options this week across all of the positions, and you might be able to do some maneuvering around with players in your side to get to them. Tino's obviously one at 531. Not a priority buy for cash generation this week, but a good scorer, and is someone that should do a good job for you that you can trust. Wong picked up a 70 last week, averaging 51. He'll make some cash. I don't know if he's a good purchase though for the longer term with the few of the guys coming back. You saw in the team list, 3 of them come back in Radley, Collins, and also Spencer Leniu, which should push Wong to some lesser minutes. And you can see across the board with the second row forward, there's not a lot of guys that are very pressing right now. Matty Nicholson, a cracking score of 98 with 2 tries last week. I think he's an easy watch this week at 336. Would you pick him or Tino? I definitely would pay the extra cash for Tino this week. We haven't seen a lot from Matty, and it's something that I think you want to watch a little bit more, so that one more week. But if you wanted to or needed to generate some cash this week, then 336k is going to help you with that for a guy that should have the spot now. Hosking's out. He did start on the edge anyway, with Hosking in the team playing through the middle, so that's a really good position there. If you have Nafahu White, if you have Aaron Clark, they're both easy holds. Seyfarth, I think either way is fine. If you're using him to upgrade or to downgrade, I think either way is cool. Do you want to sideways trade him to another, like to Satili? I personally probably wouldn't, but you can do what you please on that one. So second row forward, not a heap of clear options and not a heap of clear sells. A lot of guys just doing okay, getting the job done. Kobe Hetherington, these types of guys you could easily hold. Jack Goz, if you brought him in last week, that was tough, but he should be able to do better than what he scored last week, you would hope. Defensively, was very poor. It'll be the main problem if he loses this spot or he goes back to the bench, then he could be a priority sell. So that's the second row. Yeah, there's a couple of guys in and amongst it that should do a good job. In the halfback position, I love how I just clicked trade on Cleary, but Jamie Humphries is the guy that stands out right now. Nico Hines should score well this week, but now he's dealing with a cork issue. He had ice on it straight after the game. He's just above his knee there, and didn't perform in training yesterday in full contact. So we're a little bit worried about his goal kicking. If you're tempted to potentially captain him, maybe you got to think to vice him against the Souths this week, which is a little bit frustrating. DCE hopefully is back and has had a good start with 89 average across the two. Comes up against Canberra. If he doesn't play this week, he has the Eels next week. So it's hard to sell any of those Manly boys. Luke Metcalf, I sold last week, sad times. 117 for him. He could easily have a lower score. He could easily do well also. If you want to bring him back in, that's fine. Would you pick, Harris DeVito over him in the 5'8" slot? Potentially. With Sanders Smith an option in there. Humphries is the other guy on the list there that stands out with a 61 average across the two. Comes up against the Sharks though, and that should be a harder effort for him. to get into that 60 mark. We do see Dylan Brown with a 34, and the team just playing very, very terribly. So with Bulldogs missing a couple of key players, they could hold their own in this one, but I am still worried at how the Eels are going to go. And some people are selling Dylan Brown, and I understand it and am okay if you want to jump that way. Jerome Luai with a really tough 19 after a pretty solid start with his 54 in round one. Comes out with a 19, but does come up against the Dolphins and could get some good base stats. The worry with him is if he comes out with a lower one again against the Dolphins, then yeah, you're really losing out in that position in half or in 5/8, which is tough. Volkman loses his spot, unfortunately, for the owners of him at 214k, and if you had him instead of Duffy, then you could just do what I mentioned around going to Humphreys or going to Sanders Smith in that half slot and getting one of those hookers into your side. I personally have Matt Burton, so there's a bit of a worry there, but Galvin started really well. Chanel, 62.5 average for him, 74 last week. Should continue to play fairly well. His base stats have been solid, running the footy as well, which is good. And there's some attack down that left-hand side as well. He's definitely an option at 330. Adam Dewey, I think at 431, fits the bill, does the job, can be in there at 5/8, can go into your centre wing, and you can muck around with that up and down scenario fairly easily. He's definitely an option for me from Burton if that's the way I do decide to go. The other one I'm flirting with is holding Burton this week and going to Munster the following week after he's 99 in round one. Has Penrith, and then their draw opens up a bit, which is good. And we don't have to jump the gun on a guy that has been carrying an injury. So that's my kind of thoughts there. I'd probably wait the week definitely on Campbell. They have the Knights. He's got that tough left-hand side running at him. I think you can wait the week with prices to change the following week for him. And the centre wing, very, very clearly that Jackson Purdue is the main guy that people are trading out in this slot. Most of the guns I probably wouldn't look to move on from. I'm seeing some people look at Garrick, Herbie Farnworth, these types of guys as potential sells. We have Jesse Arthurs there at 341. So if you can sell Jackson Purdue to Jesse Arthurs, a terrific trade that is. Go for it. Cal Leroy, I think, has a really good game this week as well against the Souths, and he's averaging 88 across the two with 111 and a double last week. Jason Saab, can you purchase him averaging 110? You definitely could. But if they lose Turbo and potentially DCE this week, that hurts him against Canberra, who are playing really well. He could easily come out with a 30 or 40, but he's making line breaks for fun at the moment and is doing well. I still think it's a good week to get Greg Marzhew. He's 100k cheaper than Dylan Lucas. Hasn't scored any tries yet, I believe. No, one try, in round one. No tries last week, but 83.5 the average at 513 is a really good number. You've got Fletcher Sharp and Dylan Lucas around him that are over 100k more expensive. So I think Greg's the guy this week, and he has more chance of going bonkers as well. So that's where I'd go if you wanted another night, but just be aware of next week and missing a few of those guys. Matt Timoko has been solid. Stone Street almost bought last week at 509. That would have been good with his try-double. Alamotti, a really good game for him as well, 84. The price at 585. So there's a bunch of decent guys that are going to make cash there, but I do think you go for the guy that has the really nice run, and that's the Broncos with their next three games. Cowboys this week coming off a 95 average, price at 341. It's hard to go away from him. Connor Tracy, solid start, 587, not a clear buy unless he went nuts. And you've got the guys up top in Tuipulotu, and then Gutherson in the fullback position as well. Both started really, really well and could definitely be buys in round 4 or in round 5. So keep an eye out on them. And you do have to leave some space as well. If you're wanting to make moves in centre wing, then you have to potentially leave some space there for sure. Cobbo, bunch of tries in his game so far, 57 last week for his 71 average was fine. Bradman Best, an improved game. I think he'll do well again. Make sure you do try and grab Tamale, though, at 232, averaging 66.5. He'll make plenty of cash. Droll Skelton's a fun one as well if you haven't looked into him at 499. Not too much else to say. There's guys like Lea Ta'ua that you would hold. Jack Howarth, you can wait a week on him up against Panthers this week. And we'll leave it there. And in the fullback slot, the worry here is Trbojevic. And I think you need to leave this one as late as possible to make sure that they are playing, him and DCE, before you look to do anything. But just remember, they play Eels next week in round 4. So even if he's out this week and they are conservative and they bring him back against the Eels, he could have an absolute field day. So that's the trouble with selling him. And the question would be, who do you sell him to? So in that fullback slot, next week it could be Gutho averaging 130. That's wild. Tuipulotu obviously in the center position. Actually, I've got to click out because I'm in the flex. Pretend it's Ponga that is coming out. Sorry, Turbo instead of Ponga. But Teddy was great, 119 in his second game, still averaging 81. So he shouldn't lose too much cash, and he should have a good one in this week. Drinky was fine, so I think you can hold him as much as he's a worry. Just with the options this week, like if you're buying Reece Walsh coming off a really low score, then he's likely to lose some money, but he's also likely to score well this week. Teddy, I think, is a really fun one, but more expensive at 920. You can go for like a Dane Laurie at 514k, who's had some really awesome fixtures at the fullback slot. Like last year, he averaged incredible. After a bunch of interchange games, he ended up at 515k. So that shows his versatility and his ability to, and his upside, I should say. Pappenhausen, 131 in game 1, up against Panthers. Wait the week on him. Yongi, I think he can hold steady for the week. He'll make a bit of cash, averaging 47 across the 2. If he hits 47 again, he will make some money. It won't be crazy, 40, 50k. But you can hope that against the Dogs here, who are a little bit beat up with their couple of important players, especially on that left-hand side, Burton and Kickout, you could easily wait for that. Sorry, you can easily hold him for that game and then make decisions from there. I think that's it. There's lots to think about. It's probably 5, 6, 7 players in the cheaper to mid-range that you probably want, and I think can do a good job for you. You can't get them all this week. You may be able to wait. You've got Nicholson, you've got Tino, you've got the Storm players next week, along with Tuipulotu. The Dragons players, Tuipulotu, Gutho, those types of guys, Couchman, that all become options next week. So potentially looking at a triple trade over the next 2. And I think we'll leave it there. Thanks so much for joining in, guys. I hope that helped you with your Supercoach picks. Short and sharp. Keep it easy for you guys. We'll leave the deep diving for fantasy, where a majority of my audience is. So thanks so much, guys. We'll catch you in the next one.